We open on a younger, more vibrant Kody Brown, his hair flowing, his eyes alight with the passion of a true believer. He looks to the camera, to his wives, to the world, and makes a grand declaration, the very thesis of his life's mission. Love should be multiplied, not divided. He says, his voice full of conviction. The screen then cuts harshly to a much later scene. Kody, his face, a mask of contorted rage, is screaming, his voice cracking with an anger that seems completely disconnected from the minor household issue being discussed. The fury is volcanic, coming from a place so deep and so dark it seems to have no logical source. We thought we knew all the players. For wives, children, a sprawling, chaotic, but ultimately known universe. But what if we've been missing a huge piece of the puzzle all along? What if the endless drama, the financial chaos, and the inexplicable rage weren't just the symptoms of a broken family, but the symptoms of a secret one? This investigation explores the most explosive theory in the sister-wives universe, the phantom family that could explain everything. Welcome to Sister Wives Crew. If you're ready to question everything you thought you knew about the Brown family and explore the conspiracy that could rewrite the entire history of the show, then prove you're part of the crew right now. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we are about to pull the thread that could unravel it all. For over a decade, we have analyzed the Brown family's collapse through a specific lens. We blamed the move to Flagstaff. We blamed Kody's narcissism. We blamed the machinations of his fourth wife, Robyn. But what if all of these are just distractions? What if they are the symptoms, not the disease? This investigation proposes a radical alternative theory that the central betrayal in the Brown family was not Kody falling out of love with his first wives and in love with his last one. The central betrayal was a massive, ongoing financial and emotional fraud perpetrated against all four of the women who appeared on our screens. The theory is this. Kody Brown was supporting a completely separate secret fifth family off the books, a betrayal so profound it makes every other drama seem insignificant. This is the theory of the unseen debt. We're not just talking about infidelity in the traditional sense. We are talking about a second hidden mortgage in his entire life. A secret ledger, a phantom family that was siphoning off the family's most precious resources. Its money, its time, and its emotional energy. Every dollar the OG wives earned and contributed to the family pot, every sacrifice they made, every lonely night they spent while Kody was away on business may have been funding a lie of unimaginable proportions. Think about the Brown family trust, the one family pot that Mary, Janelle, and Christine poured their lives into. They operated under the belief that they were the only shareholders, that the resources, while stretched thin, were being divided amongst the people they saw every day. But if this theory holds true, they were victims of a massive embezzlement scheme. A significant portion of their collective earnings, their TLC money, their very life's work, was being systematically diverted to an unknown entity, a secret wife, and potentially more secret children that they had no knowledge of. This is a fraud that goes beyond a broken heart. It is a betrayal that recontextualizes every single financial struggle the family ever faced. The bankruptcy in Vegas, the desperate need to sell their homes, the financial black hole of Coyote Pass. We have always viewed these as the results of poor planning and lavish spending. But what if they were the result of a man trying to finance two separate, sprawling families on one income? The numbers, as we knew them, never quite added up. The level of perpetual, panicked financial stress always seemed disproportionate. This theory is the missing variable that makes the equation finally make sense. The debt wasn't just what we could see, it was the massive, unseen burden of a complete double life. And the betrayal is emotional, a fraud of the heart. The wives believed they were sharing a husband, that his time and affection, however limited, were part of a known system. But if there was a fifth family, then every emotion Kody displayed was a lie. His affection was more divided than they could ever imagine. And his anger, his famous, inexplicable rage, was not the frustration of a polygamist patriarch, but the volcanic stress of a man cracking under the unbearable pressure of maintaining a massive, life-altering secret. He wasn't just dividing his love. He was living a lie so vast it was poisoning every one of his known relationships from the inside out. Now we will connect the dots of a double life. This is where the conspiracy theory moves from speculation to a pattern of deeply suspicious evidence. We will conduct a forensic investigation into the great unknown of Kody Brown's life. We will track his unexplained absences. We will analyze his constant and disproportionate financial stress. And we will re-examine his erratic, volcanic mood swings, framing it all as concrete evidence of a man cracking under the pressure of a massive hidden secret. Let's begin with the financial black hole. For years, the Brown family's finances have been a source of public fascination and confusion. Here is a family earning a substantial figure and at times likely a figure income from a hit reality TV show. Yet they are in a state of perpetual, soul-crushing financial panic. They declared bankruptcy in Las Vegas. They were constantly taking out high-interest loans against their properties. And then there's Coyote Pass, the financial graveyard where over $1 of their liquidated assets went to die. The official narrative is that they are simply bad with money, prone to Kody's grandiose and impractical schemes. But what if that's only half the story? What if the known expenses, the mortgages, the rentals, the food for a massive family, were only a fraction of the actual expenses Kody was juggling? Imagine for a moment a second set of books, a second mortgage or rent payment in another town. Second sets of utility bills, car payments, grocery bills, potentially even school fees or medical expenses for children we have never seen. Suddenly, the Browns' financial desperation doesn't look like mismanagement. It looks like a man desperately trying to keep Titanic households afloat with one stream of income. It explains the constant need for cash, the leveraging of assets, and the frantic, nonsensical decision to buy Coyote Pass. What if the land wasn't just a bad investment? What if it was a desperate attempt to create a tangible asset on the books? A way to explain where a massive chunk of money had gone while the actual cash was being funneled elsewhere? Insider reports have long whispered about Kody's strange financial dealings. Sources have claimed he would often handle the family's finances with an obsessive, secretive control, with large cash withdrawals that were never fully accounted for. The other wives, particularly Janelle, were often kept in the dark about the true, granular state of their finances. This secrecy was always framed as Kody's patriarchal control, but what if it was the necessary behavior of an embezzler? He couldn't give them a full accounting because to do so would be to reveal the massive, gaping hole where money was being diverted to his phantom family. Next, we must examine the chronological anomalies, Kody Brown's unexplained absences. Throughout the entire run of the show, Kody is a man in constant motion. He is always on the road, always traveling. The justification was always plausible on the surface. Business trips for his various side hustles, like the gun shows or his alleged work in advertising. He needed to travel between the 4 separate homes. But if you begin to track the timeline, you find holes, gaps in the narrative, unexplained days where his location was vague at best. Remember the frequent trips he would take alone to clear his head? Where was he going? A long drive in the desert or a clandestine visit to another life in another town a few hours away? This theory posits that many of these business trips were a cover. They were the logistical necessity of a man servicing 2 separate family structures. It would explain the constant exhaustion, the feeling that he was always spread too thin. He wasn't just spread between 4 wives, he was potentially spread between 8 or 9 households across different states. Insiders have suggested that Kody maintained a secret cell phone for years, a classic tool of the trade for anyone living a double life. It would also explain his almost paranoid obsession with controlling the schedule. Any disruption, like Christine wanting to move to Utah, wasn't just an emotional inconvenience. It was a logistical nightmare that threatened to derail the impossibly complex timetable of his secret life. His bizarre travel patterns during the peak of the pandemic provide even more fuel for this fire. He used his strict COVID rules as a justification to stop traveling between the homes of Christine and Janelle almost entirely. But was he truly isolated at Robyn's house / Or did the chaos of the pandemic and the breakdown of his normal family rotation provide the perfect cover for him to spend even more time with his secret family under the guise of quarantining? The anger and frustration from the OG wives about his absences may have been even more justified than they knew. They thought they were losing their time to Robyn, when in fact they may have all been losing time to a ghost they never even knew existed. Finally, we must analyze the psychological profile. The most compelling evidence for the secret family theory is Kody Brown's inexplicable rage. Throughout the later seasons, he transforms from a goofy, attention-seeking patriarch into a bitter, angry man, prone to outbursts of fury that are wildly disproportionate to the situation at hand. He screams at his wives and children over minor disagreements, his eyes bugging out, his voice cracking with a pressure that seems to come from deep within his soul. We've attributed this to his midlife crisis, to his failing relationships, to his frustration with losing control. But what if we are seeing the psychological toll of living a massive, catastrophic lie? The stress of maintaining a secret of that magnitude would be unbearable. The constant fear of exposure, the logistical nightmare of scheduling, the immense financial pressure of funding two families. It would be enough to break anyone. His rage is not the anger of a husband in a bad marriage. It is the panic of a con man whose scheme is about to collapse. Every challenge, every question from a wife, every demand from a child becomes a potential threat that could unravel his entire secret world. When Christine questions his decisions, he explodes because she is inadvertently poking holes in his alibi. When his sons challenge his authority, he melts down because he is already stretched to his psychological breaking point and has no emotional reserves left. His famous quote, "The head is willing, but the flesh is weak," takes on a chilling new meaning. Was he talking about the temptations of infidelity, or was it a Freudian slip, a confession of a man whose mind can no longer bear the strain of the double life his body is living? His entire personality shift can be seen as the slow, agonizing implosion of a man crushed under the weight of an impossible secret. He wasn't just losing control of one family, he was losing his grip on a fragile, fraudulent empire he had built in the shadows. Now we must re-examine the entire series through this new, terrifying lens if the fifth family theory is true. Then the confusion and bewilderment of the OG wives are no longer just the sad ramblings of women in failing relationships. Their confusion becomes the most crucial eyewitness testimony we have. We will now present a montage of their own words, their own moments of utter bafflement, not as signs of their emotional distress, but as the consistent, corroborating testimony of co-wives who could sense a massive, unseen force tearing their family apart. Even if they couldn't possibly identify its source, let's begin with Christine. For years, Christine was the emotional barometer of the family, and her testimony is filled with moments of profound, gut-wrenching confusion. Consider her constant refrain during the Flagstaff years. "This makes no sense." She said it about the move itself, a financially ruinous decision to relocate to a city where they had no jobs and no support system. She said it about the bizarre, shifting plans for the Coyote Pass property, where Kody would alternate between demanding they build one big house and then insisting they could never build at all. To Christine and to the viewers, Kody's decisions seemed erratic, illogical, and self-sabotaging. But what if they weren't illogical at all? What if they were perfectly logical but were being dictated by a set of secret circumstances we couldn't see? The move to Flagstaff, for example. We've always been told it was about escaping a bad culture in Vegas, but what if Flagstaff was chosen for its strategic location? What if it was geographically convenient to the location of the secret fifth family, allowing Kody to manage his two lives with a shorter, less suspicious commute? Suddenly, the nonsensical move makes perfect sinister sense. Christine's confusion is the testimony of a woman who is being gaslit on a grand scale. She knows the official story is a lie. Her gut tells her something is deeply wrong, but she cannot fathom the sheer scale of the deception. Her tearful declaration, "I don't recognize the man I married," is not a metaphor. It is the literal truth. She was married to a man who was, for all intents and purposes, a stranger. A man living a life she knew nothing about. Next, we call Janelle Brown to the stand. Janelle, the logical, pragmatic accountant of the family, provided years of testimony about the financial black hole. Her constant frustration with Kody's secrecy and his reckless spending was not just a difference in financial philosophy. It was the confusion of a CFO who knows the books are being cooked but can't find the second ledger. Remember her bewilderment when Kody, in the midst of their most severe financial crisis, was still pushing to buy more property or start another risky venture? It seemed like madness. But if Kody was under immense pressure to provide for a second, unseen family, his desperation to generate more cash through any means necessary becomes understandable. He wasn't being ambitious. He was being cornered, Janelle's statement. "I don't know who he is anymore," uttered in the wake of his volcanic rage against their sons, is a key piece of evidence. She had been with Kody for decades. She knew his moods, his temper, his flaws. For her to see his behavior as alien, as unrecognizable, is a powerful indicator that he was being influenced by an external pressure she had never witnessed before. It wasn't the Kody she knew because he was no longer just the patriarch of their family. He was a man being torn apart by two worlds, and the strain was creating a monster she couldn't identify. Her confusion is the testimony of a business partner who senses a massive off-the-books expenditure that is about to bankrupt the entire company. Finally, we have the testimony of Mary Brown, the original wife. Mary's relationship with Kody was the most fractured for the longest time, and her confusion was often the most profound. She would describe Kody as a ghost in their family, a man who was physically present but emotionally miles away. This was always interpreted as the result of their own personal issues, the lingering fallout from her catfishing scandal. But what if his distance wasn't personal? What if he was emotionally absent from his known families because his emotional energy was being consumed elsewhere? It would explain the coldness, the detachment, the inability to connect. He had nothing left to give because he was already giving it to someone else. The OG wives' collective inability to understand the COVID rules also becomes powerful testimony. They saw the rules as illogical, hypocritical, and designed only to benefit Robyn. They couldn't understand why Kody would so willingly abandon his other children for months on end. Their bewilderment makes perfect sense if you are only looking at the known players. But if you introduce the possibility of a fifth family, a family that may have had a legitimate health concern, or a newborn child that Kody was desperate to protect, his paranoia takes on a new, albeit still selfish, logic. He wasn't just protecting Robyn's household. He may have been protecting his entire secret empire from exposure or from the virus itself. The wife's confusion is the most powerful evidence we have. It is the testimony of three insiders who knew, on a deep, instinctual level, that there was a massive piece of the story missing. They were living in a house with a ghost, a phantom presence that was draining their resources, stealing their husband and driving him mad. And they never even knew its name. The time has come to deliver a verdict. After examining the mountain of circumstantial evidence, the financial black hole, the unexplained absences, the psychological collapse of the patriarch, and the corroborating testimony of three bewildered wives, we must rule on the theory of the secret fifth family. While there is no smoking gun, no photograph of Kody Brown with a secret wife and children, the theory itself must be ruled as the only logical explanation for a decade of completely illogical behavior. It is the grand unified theory of the Brown family collapse. It is the key that unlocks every mystery, the variable that makes every nonsensical equation finally balance. Without it, we are left with a story of a man who simply went crazy, who financially and emotionally destroyed his family for reasons that even he cannot articulate. With it, we have the story of a criminal, a con man, a master of deception, whose actions, while monstrous, are at least driven by the cold, hard logic of maintaining a double life. The victory, then, belongs to the OG wives, and it is a victory far greater than we ever imagined. Their decision to leave Kody was not just an escape from a failing plural marriage or a narcissistic husband. They were the victims of a crime they didn't even know was being committed. By walking away, they removed themselves from the blast radius of Kody's inevitable implosion. They extricated themselves and their children from a fraudulent enterprise that was morally, emotionally, and financially bankrupt. Think of Christine finding a new life with David Woolley. Her victory is not just in finding a loving, monogamous partner. It is in finding a man who lives one transparent life, a man whose finances make sense, a man whose time is accounted for, a man whose emotional responses are tethered to their shared reality. She escaped a house of mirrors and found a home with clear windows. Think of Janelle thriving in her independence, surrounded by her children. Her victory is in reclaiming her financial and emotional sovereignty. She is no longer tethered to a sinking ship, a ship being secretly scuttled by its own captain. Her peace comes from the simple, profound reality of knowing that the resources she has are hers, that the life she is living is the only one. They won by escaping a man living a life so fractured and deceitful that he had become a ghost in his own family. And so the final judgment falls upon Kody Brown. He is judged not just as a bad husband or a failed polygamist. He is judged as the architect of a deception so vast and complex it almost defies belief. If the theory holds true, he is a man who betrayed not just one wife or 3 wives, but all of them in the most profound way imaginable. He built a television empire on the principle of multiplying love, all while potentially dividing his resources and his very identity in secret. He is a man who has become a stranger to everyone, including himself. His legacy will be one of mystery and suspicion, a cautionary tale of a man whose secrets became so heavy they crushed everything he ever claimed to love. He is left as a ghost in his own life, haunted by the families he abandoned, and perhaps by the one we never knew. In the end, it doesn't matter if the 5th family is real or not. The fact that Kody's behavior makes it a plausible, even logical explanation is an indictment all its own. He created a life so filled with lies and contradictions that the most outlandish conspiracy theory has become the most rational explanation, and that in itself is the final damning verdict. But our investigation cannot end there. To simply rule on the existence of a phantom family is to leave the most critical question unanswered. For a deception of this magnitude to be successful, it requires a willing accomplice. And in the Brown family saga, there has always been one prime suspect for any and all conspiracies, Robyn Brown. This forces us to ask a terrifying question. Where does Robyn, the wife, fit into the theory of the th? Was she just another victim, the most well cared for perhaps, but a victim nonetheless? Or was she something far more sinister? Was she Kody's co-conspirator? Let's explore a chilling possibility, an exclusive theory that reframes Robyn's entire role in the family. What if Robyn Brown knew? What if she discovered Kody's secret early in their courtship? Or perhaps he even confessed it to her, seeing her as his only true confidant? If so, her entire history in the family is no longer that of a homewrecker, but that of a blackmailer. This theory posits that Robyn's seemingly endless list of demands, the legal marriage, the house, the constant prioritization of her and her children, were not just the actions of a greedy or favored wife. They were the price of her silence. Consider the timeline. Robyn enters the family, and almost immediately, the financial and emotional pressure on Kody seems to quintuple. We've always assumed this was because of the added expense of her and her 3 children, but what if the pressure cooker was Kody's secret life and Robyn simply arrived and turned up the heat? She would have held the ultimate leverage. A single whisper from her, a slip of the tongue to one of the other wives or a TLC producer and Kody's entire world, both his public television empire and his secret private one, would come crashing down. This theory makes her actions coldly logical. The demand for the legal marriage was not about adopting her children. It was about securing an ironclad legal and financial position for herself before the inevitable collapse. It was a golden parachute. If Kody's secret life ever came to light, she would be the only one with legal claim to his remaining assets. The house was not just a home. It was a tangible, high-value asset, a fortress to secure her future, a payoff for her silence. Her insistence on Kody spending all his time with her and her children wasn't just about love, it was about control. It was about keeping the prime asset, Kody, under constant surveillance. Ensuring he wasn't spending too many resources, either financial or emotional, on the OG families, thus preserving more for her and for the secret family she was leveraging. Kody's bizarre, slavish devotion to her suddenly appears in a new light. Is it the behavior of a man deeply in love, or the terrified compliance of a man who is being expertly controlled? His constant defense of her, his willingness to sacrifice his relationships with his other children on the altar of her happiness. It all could be seen as a man desperately trying to appease the one person on earth who could expose him and utterly destroy him. The dynamic between them is not one of a loving couple, but a twisted, codependent partnership built on a catastrophic secret. She needed his resources, and he desperately needed her silence. However, there is another, perhaps even more Machiavellian theory to consider that Robyn was not the blackmailer, but the perfect scapegoat. This theory suggests that Kody, the master manipulator, used Robyn's arrival as the perfect cover for his pre-existing double life. He knew the OG wives were already suspicious of the new young wife. He knew they would scrutinize her every move, so he intentionally and systematically favored her. He bought her the nicer things. He spent more time at her house. He catered to her every whim. He did this not because he loved her more, but because he needed a distraction, a bright, shiny object to draw everyone's attention while he continued to siphon money and time to the real secret, family hashtag. In this scenario, Robyn becomes the perfect misdirection. Every dollar that went missing could be blamed on Robyn's expensive tastes. Every hour he was absent could be blamed on Robyn needing him more. The